I said I was done. I said it was all over, but I've changed my mind and I'm back. I'm back on this subject of the Michael Jackson sexual abuse allegations because I very recently watched a new documentary called SquareOne. So let me just, before I give my reaction to that, break down the history of my involvement, or this channel's involvement, with these various different documentaries. I started off just over a year ago by giving my thoughts on the Leaving Neverland documentary of last year. Now when I say thoughts, because I hadn't watched the entire documentary. I'd watched a few clips and I'd also read a lot or listened a lot, watched some YouTube videos around the subject. So all of the evidence they didn't present in Leaving Neverland to give my thoughts. Now at the time that video was very popular on this channel, got a lot of praise, but also got a little bit of criticism with people saying, well, hold on Joe, you haven't actually watched the full documentary, so how can you be creating a reaction video to that documentary? I thought to myself, fair enough point. So I took the time to actually watch the full documentary about 3 or 4 months ago. And you can watch that video, as you can watch the one before, on the channel. I'll put links to them below in the description. So I watched that documentary about 3 or 4 months ago to see if it changed my point of view. And I actually found the documentary very convincing. That doesn't mean I actually believed what the two men said, Wade Robson and James Safechuck. Doesn't mean I completely believed their stories, but I found the documentary purely in itself quite convincing. Now I knew that there was a lot of evidence to suggest that this didn't happen outside of the documentary, but when it came to just what was within the documentary, it was making me potentially change my point of view. And I didn't know. I thought at the end of it, I don't know whether he abused these boys who are now men, or I don't know whether this is a story they're making up to gain a lot of money. I just was unclear. So I also said at the end of that video that I wasn't going to revisit this subject on my channel. I was done with it. Well, it all changed since I watched this new documentary. Well, it's not particularly new, it came out last year, but it came out after Leaving Neverland, which is called SquareOne, made by director Danny Wu. I watched this about 10 days ago, and it had a big impact on my thinking about Leaving Neverland and about the whole accusations. Now you may be asking, Joe, why are you making Michael Jackson videos or reaction videos on your Screw the System channel? This channel is primarily about personal development, how to improve your life and how to transform your life. So why am I talking about this issue? Well, very simple, because it shows the role that the system plays in influencing and manipulating our lives. One of the arms of the system is the media, and it has a huge impact on the way people think. And certainly with this issue, it's a sort of a microcosm of media manipulation. And that's why I wanted to explore this last, potentially, hopefully, last video on the subject, SquareOne, and give my thoughts on both the video and the role that the media plays in society at large. So first of all, the documentary. Now I have just been online looking at a few of the critical reviews of this documentary, through the 1-star reviews on Amazon, and the thing I notice is that they say over and over again how amateurish it is, or how looks like it's filmed on a Nokia. I think that's the frequent criticism. I didn't actually particularly notice that, or it didn't bother me if the filmmaking is not as good and polished as Leaving Neverland. I don't think that in any way diminishes the content or the quality or what the documentary is actually about, but perhaps there is a slightly, perhaps the documentary making is not quite as good, but to be honest, as somebody who watched it without reading that comment, I didn't notice anything. I was perfectly happy with the quality of the documentary. And after all, the content is more important, and the content I found was very strong and very convincing. Now it's all based around the first allegation, and this was by a boy called Jordan Chandler in 1993. It does go deeper into the second allegation by Gavin Arvizo, which was in 2005, when Michael Jackson went to court and was acquitted, found innocent on all charges. And it does very lightly touch on the subjects from Leaving Neverland, which was a post death accusation from Wade Robson and James Safechuck. But primarily it focuses on the case of Jordan Chandler, and I think this is where a lot of people's prejudices and opinions begin. Their whole argument is that Michael Jackson is a paedophile because he hangs out with small boys and he paid off Jordan Chandler. He didn't want to go to court. He'd rather pay him off to go away, sort of hush money, basically. Now, what this SquareOne documentary is very good at doing is revealing exactly why he did this. Now, you get an impression after watching this documentary that the system, the judicial system, was really out to get Michael Jackson. It was doing everything it possibly could, even probably underhand tactics. And now the reason everybody needs to understand as to why the Michael Jackson team paid off Jordan Chandler with these accusations is because the civil suit was coming before the criminal suit. And this is, I think the law has been changed, so this cannot happen anymore because it is so unfair against the person who is being accused of doing something. Because basically what would happen is Michael Jackson's team would have had to present their whole case at the civil suit to win that, and meanwhile face a criminal charge further down the line where the whole criminal team would have had access to their entire defense, and then able to pick it apart and then able to present a stronger case at the criminal trial. They obviously didn't want that. That would have been a disaster. Let's for argument's sake say Michael Jackson is innocent. That's a disaster, even if he is innocent, because their legal team can twist everything and manipulate it and put forward their own case to try to gain a guilty verdict. So that's why they had to pay him off, and they make it very clear in that documentary. And although many people see that as a sign of guilt on Michael Jackson's behalf, it was actually what turns out to be a very sensible decision. Now, they couldn't happen again because, as I said, the law was subsequently changed in California so that the criminal trial has to go first. Now, the documentary explains this well, and it also has a very few other interesting insights. Jordan Chandler initially said that Michael Jackson didn't abuse him in any way. It was only after his very psychologically unstable father, and this is something the documentary makes very clear, is that this Evan Chandler, Jordan's father, was out to get Michael Jackson. It was a defrauding attempt, an attempt to get money out of him. And again, you've got to ask the question, why is there a civil suit? Why are they pursuing him in a civil suit rather than the criminal case? Well, the civil suit's the one where you get damages and you get money, and you get the impression that's what it was always about. Money rather than justice. After all, Jordan Chandler and his dad Evan could have still pursued Michael in a criminal case, even with the big settlement they got out of court. There was nothing stopping them doing that. They could have gone ahead and done it, but they chose not to. Why? Because Michael Jackson was guilty and they wanted revenge, or because they had got the payoff and that's really all they were after? And you also see the FBI investigation into Michael Jackson, a 10-year, on and off for 10 years, which found absolutely nothing. No child pornography at Leaving Neverland. It turns out that when the police made Michael Jackson strip and to view his lower part of his body, his genitals, his butt, to look for markings, the vitiligo skin condition he suffered from, although it's been reported that Jordan came up with a match when describing his penis, it wasn't actually the case, and the documentary goes into that as well. And if it was the case, it could have been used at the 2005 trial, yet it wasn't. So this, compared to Leaving Neverland, I would say this presents far more substantial evidence. Remember, Leaving Neverland is a lot of hearsay, basically. It's just stories. Yes, James Safechuck produces some silly little ring, but he could have bought that anywhere. That's not evidence. Whereas SquareOne provides actual documents from courts, from the FBI files, to show that there is substantial evidence to question Jordan Chandler's claims. I would say reject them, to be honest. Interestingly enough, right at the end of SquareOne, they do present a little snippet of a document that states that James Safechuck was sued a week before he made the Michael Jackson allegations. I don't know if I'm reading this incorrectly, so please correct me in the comment section if you know more about this, but it seemed that he was under legal pressure just before he then launched his own claim against Michael Jackson. Now, he wasn't being sued by the Michael Jackson estate. I'm assuming this is a work-related matter or some other area of his life, but very suspicious that he should then launch an allegation against Michael Jackson and go for a civil suit after he himself had been sued, if I'm understanding that correctly. So I think this will be the end of this matter. I've already made, this is my third video on the subject. I don't anticipate making another, but please put your thoughts and comments below. Finally, how does this all relate to the media and my point about the system? Well, it just shows you how strong the media manipulation is, how powerful it is. I remember teaching a tennis lesson. I also do tennis coaching, probably a year and a half ago, just after the Leaving Neverland documentary. And there were some kids in my group. And I can't remember how Michael Jackson was mentioned, but somebody mentioned him. And immediately two of the kids said, "Oh, he's a pedophile." And you see, that is how the media shapes people's minds. They push a narrative. Now, it's very interesting to note that SquareOne hasn't nearly had any of the publicity that Leaving Neverland has. There's no Sundance Film Festival premiere. There's no media coverage because it doesn't fit into the narrative. Doesn't matter if it might represent the truth on the matter. That's not what's important. The media narrative is what's important. What's sensational, what sells is what's important. And Michael Jackson being a pedophile makes more money for the media than him actually being innocent and massively misunderstood. So my message is protect yourself against the media. In fact, I would go so far as to say don't watch any mainstream news, don't read any newspapers. You're really not missing out on anything. We can see it right now with the coronavirus we're going through. Nobody seems to be really clear on the severity of this virus or what's really happening. All that is clear is the media is having an absolute field day with this, and it's probably a huge story that they just want to continue to run and run with. But yet we see again how the media creates this fear, creates this sensation, because it wants to sell to you. It wants you to buy its products or buy its newspapers or engage with it, spend time watching the news, make it more relevant. And that's why, going back to the story of Michael Jackson, this idea of him being a pedophile is so much more appealing to him, to the media. And that's how they will continue to present it. They don't want to hear the other side of the story. They don't want to hear what is probably the truth. And that's why my recommendation to any of you who follow and watch this channel is switch off, turn the media off. There's virtually nothing beneficial you are going to get from having them poison your thinking and poison your mind. Okay, thanks for watching this video. Do remember to subscribe if you like the channel. Leave a comment below. Share your thoughts. Even if you disagree with what I'm saying, I'm still interested in hearing it. And I will see you in the next video.